Do you ever feel that you need to watch a movie for the second time and feel as excited as you did the first time? Well then, this is where identical sequels come in and do their magic. Sequels usually struggle to give us that element that we're looking for. Sometimes it's underwhelming and occasionally overwhelming. In this video, we'll look at how our favorite Home Alone 2 proves identical sequels can work. First off, what's Home Alone 2 like? Home Alone 2 Lost in New York, which came out in 1992, is exactly the same movie as the first one. Usually, a sequel tries to give people more of what they already liked and a little bit more. Except for a few key details, like the title. Kevin McAllister's second solo outing took the comedy franchise to a whole new level by putting the young boy in the middle of America's biggest city. Kevin gets into all kinds of trouble and funny situations as he tries to find his way through a scary world and faces off against what may be the most incompetent pair of thieves ever to appear on the big screen. Does this story sound familiar? Just 2 years after the huge success of the first Home Alone, the second movie did very well at the box office, but critics had mixed things to say about it. When talking about the second movie, critics often said that it was just a rehash of everything that made the first movie so entertaining and memorable. But this criticism of sequels is usually fair and understandable, mainly because in the years since the first movie came out, sequels and franchises have become much more common in Hollywood. Interestingly, this particular sequel loves the chance to tell the exact same story, even though it is admittingly in a cartoonish and silly way. Home Alone 2 as a franchise is so happy to repeat itself over and over again that you can't help but think that's the point. Instead of giving fans something new and different, writer John Hughes and director Chris Columbus kept referring to the first movie. Up next, the plot of the movie. On the morning when the McAllister parents are supposed to leave for Florida for the holidays, they sleep through their alarm because they forgot to change it. The McAllister parents wake up startled and say at the same time, "We did it again." We've heard that a lot, haven't we? This is probably one of Home Alone 2's most famous lines. From the opening credits to the last line of dialogue, this sequel uses and recycles the story, structure, and jokes from Home Alone so much that it sometimes feels like it's not even a sequel, but just a carbon copy of the 1990 movie. Christmas is coming up quickly, and Kevin McAllister, who is one of many children in a large family, is still the youngest and gets the short end of the stick. Within 10 minutes, he has upset the rest of his family, and he is sent to the attic the night before a family trip. The next morning, when Kevin's family is in a hurry to get to the airport, Kevin accidentally gets on the wrong flight and ends up in New York City. At this point, you can't help but wonder how good the boy's parents are in general, and what kind of trauma Kevin might face as an adult. Who even lets their kid end up on a different flight to another city, right? Followed by what the movie speaks out. Home Alone 2 is truly an example of taking a thin premise and making it even thinner. Basically, a movie experiment to see if people are willing to see the same things over and over again and forgive obvious repetitions. The sequel goes back to all the things that made the first one fun and keeps raising the stakes for entertainment's sake. We all loved that, didn't we? The structure of the story doesn't change at all. Kevin is no longer with his family, so he has to take care of himself. At first, he enjoys his newfound freedom by doing all of the things a child who has money and doesn't have to be watched would do. In the meantime, some adults are suspicious of the boy and don't understand how he can handle the dangerous waters of the real world. An old character who at first seems scary and unpleasant, but who turns out to have a good heart, acts as Kevin's surrogate parent and teaches him about life and how important family is. The most important part, two clumsy thieves get in Kevin's way, which is obviously bad for them. None of us would want to get in his way, right? He's an absolute menace, and the thieves are witnesses to that. They face another level of violence that will make you laugh out loud. Moving on to, the movie doesn't shy away from going overboard. A big part of the movie's appeal, and why people like it even though it's the same thing over and over again, is that it doesn't apologize for taking everything people liked about the first movie to a higher level. At times, we'd even say things are to the point of being absurd. Starting with the movie's title, it's clear that a lonely house in a Chicago suburb wouldn't work for the movie's action. Instead, the movie needed a setting that matched its attempts to expand on Home Alone's idea. What could be scarier than one of the world's largest cities for a child who already thinks the world is scary and dangerous? New York City is a very overwhelming place. It has a dense, tall skyline, crowded streets and sidewalks, and a dark social underbelly that Kevin finds out about one night in Central Park. The movie also adds to the colorful side of characters that were in the first one. Tim Curry plays a scary concierge who is determined to ruin Kevin's fun, and a young Rob Schneider plays a sleazy bellboy who is determined to get cash tips. Now let's talk about the big problem. Harry and Marv, who might be even less lucky than they were the first time, get beaten up by Kevin in a way that truly matches what bad guys get in many action movies. If people thought that falling on ice, getting caught on a nail, or getting hit with a paint can was painful, then the injuries these characters get in Home Alone 2 must be off the charts. Let's talk about what the critics didn't like. A lot of critics didn't like the movie when it came out because it was too repetitive and had too much violence. An American critic, Roger Ebert, wrote about how unhappy he was problems with this part of the sequel. He talked about how these are like Roadrunner adventures, but Wile E. Coyote is being played by the criminals. As per him, the problem is that violence in cartoons is only funny when it is in a cartoon. Attempts to make live-action movies that look like animation have failed because when real people fall to the ground, we can almost hear their bones break, which isn't funny. It looked like Roger took things a little too seriously at the time. We understand that Ebert is right that the violence in Home Alone 2 is cartoonish and exaggerated, but that's exactly why audiences can handle it and laugh so hard at the people who got hurt. Logic says that no person will be able to survive this kind of attack. But these physical jokes are never meant to be taken seriously. They are just meant to be funny additions to the over-the-top reality Hughes and Columbus wanted to show on film. Not to mention how the movie keeps breaking the fourth wall. This sequel, like the first, is quite self-aware and frequently breaks the fourth wall. The filmmakers aren't afraid to accept and embrace the repetitive nature for hilarious effect. Whether it's Kevin staring directly into the camera and chatting to it, or his parents yelling at the audience when they realize they've overslept. When Kevin misbehaves early in the movie, his mother makes a blatant reference to how similar the opening of Home Alone is. The following morning, as the family prepares to leave for the airport in a van, they almost forget about Kevin once more till the child pokes his head out from behind the front seat. His mother screams the same frantic cry as in the first movie when his family finds them in the Miami airport and realizes they've lost Kevin once more, although the cry was exaggerated. Let's learn more about how the plot keeps changing tracks. Home Alone 2 also plays on audience expectations by dropping hints throughout the story that a specific joke or situation will go one way before unexpectedly deviating off course and going in another one. In the hilarious final part of the movie, when Kevin squares off against Harry and Marv in a rundown townhouse, we see many of these callbacks that later branch out into new paths. This time, Harry remembers to inspect a doorknob before grabbing it in case it's searingly hot, and him dodging the path of light strings only works until he starts being reckless. We also saw that, like the year before, the burglars thought they might be attacked with paint cans again, so they suddenly halt while chasing Kevin on the stairs. They continue to climb after deceiving Kevin into believing they had been hit by his rain of armed paint cans, only to be suddenly stunned by a massive metal beam that knocks them to the ground many stories below. These lighthearted moments, which don't necessarily breach the fourth wall and tell us straight up, but yet also wink at the audience, help to heighten the comedy in the movie. Finally, Home Alone will always make us feel good. Even though the movie feels like a remake of the original, by the time it ends, people keep coming back to it even 30 years later. We're all included in this, right? Home Alone 2 is one of the few identical sequels for which viewers are prepared to set aside their anger with repetition. This is probably due to the fact that it's set during the holiday season and that it continues to be a crowd favorite year after year. In this case, audiences want the security and comfort of the repetitive plot and cliches when they see this movie again. And on that note, that's a wrap for this video. What do you think about Home Alone's identicalness? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. We'll see you in the next one.